Okay, I did press the recording button and it should be recording, yes. So hello everybody, nice to see you again. As you know, I was away last week and back in operation. Before we actually start, I would like to thank those people who very generously helped out with the Zoom and supporting Zoom and the website and so on and so forth. I'll mention a few people by name. I'm only going to say the first names because I don't want people to feel I didn't ask permission from anybody to say their names. But I'd like to thank Ernest and Paul and Martin and Dennis and Alan and Hank and Shelley and Terry and anyone else whose name I've forgotten. Please forgive me. I just wrote a quick list of what I remembered off the top of my head. If there was anybody else, I do really appreciate it. And may you all go from strength to strength. As you can see, we have the website up. I mean, we have Zoom running, and everything is well. Okay, now one of the things that I wanted to do this week, the primary thing that I want to do this week, despite the fact that it is debate night tonight. I'm not sure that anybody's actually interested in that, but if you are, I'm sure that will be recorded too. But so will this. So we look good. Now, one thing I wanted to discuss is the whole concept of the incoming year. As you may all know, the Jewish New Year is not the same as not the same date as the regular Gregorian calendar New Year. That's January the 1st, but the Jewish calendar basically goes on a lunar cycle, and therefore the year is shorter most of the time and longer some of the time, because the lunar cycle is shorter than the solar cycle. So it comes out that generally the lunar cycle is about 11 days shorter than 11 and a quarter days shorter than the solar cycle. So every couple of years we have a leap year. This last year was a leap year, and the new Jewish New Year will start towards the end of September. I don't even know what the date is right now. Should have looked it up, I guess, but in the Hebrew calendar, it's on the first day of Tishrei. I don't have my phone on me either, so I can't check it. All right, whatever it is, I'm sure you could all look on a calendar. If anyone wants to know when it is, I will be very happy to let you know. 9/29/19. There you go, Shelley. Thank you. The 29th of the month. Appreciate it. I guess I should have checked this out before, but I really go mostly by the Hebrew calendar, so I don't think so much about the English calendar. Okay. In any event, the Jewish New Year is not just a year where it's just, sometimes people say as follows. Gone is the old year and its curses, and now the new year with its blessings begin. Now, we don't look at it necessarily that way. The old year with its curses is not the way we look at things, but we definitely do look at the blessings of the new year. And the new year, as with many, many other things, each year has its special character, since it's a special and unique period in time. So I'm sorry, did I say before 351 days? I meant 354 days is the length of the lunar calendar. Just struck me. So the point that I would like to make is that just as when we do a name analysis, for some of you have asked me to do that for you. I've done a name analysis for perhaps quite a few of you. Just as the name analysis goes according to the consecutive words in certain verses, the first verse in the Torah, in the 5 books of Moses, or failing that in scripture in the 24 books of the prophets, the first time that your name is spelled out by the beginning letters of consecutive words in a verse, or failing that end letters of consecutive words in a verse. So given that, the idea is that the verse that spells out the name, or spells out the year in this case, is of very great significance. And by understanding that verse, one will understand the nature of the coming year. Now, why is that so? Because I think I've mentioned the story many times. There's a famous story with Nachmanides, the Ramban, 13th century sage, who lived in the 1300s actually, 14th century sage, I guess you could say, who was also a very accomplished Kabbalist. And the story is told about a student that he had, whose name was Avner, and Avner one day disappeared. And many, many years later, he turned up, and he was no longer religious at all. He completely dropped the faith and everything. And he came and visited the Ramban, who at first did not recognize him. He looked very different from the way he looked as a student. And he said, "You know why I dumped everything? Because you told us something that wasn't true." So what did I tell you that wasn't true? So he said that everything is hinted to in the Torah. So he says, and I still maintain that, the Ramban said, I still maintain that that is the case. So he says, okay, where am I hinted to in the Torah? So he quoted him a verse. I don't want to get into the verse now, but he quoted him a verse, and he showed him that the third letter of each of the of consecutive words in the verse spelled out the name Avner. And when Avner saw this, he started thinking for a while, and then he said, so what do I do? And he said, well, fulfill what it says in the verse. And in the verse it says basically that you have to leave your place and go to a place where you are unknown, and then you will be able to reconstruct yourself. That's basically what the verses are talking about over there. So this has been a method of understanding the character of a person, the future, the destiny, you could say, of a person, plus understanding the character and the destiny of the year. So we're going to use this method today. We've used it in the past and for a couple of years, and some of you are familiar with it. But without further ado, let us go to the verse that discusses this. That discusses this issue. Let me just go over here. Okay, now share the screen, and just 1 second. There we are. Okay, can everyone see the screen? Okay. Yeah, everyone can see that. Can see the where it says there's. It should be saying 5780. Yes. Yes. Okay. Good. All right. So we'll go from there. Now the upcoming year is 5780, or Hey Taf Shin Pei in the Hebrew, right? 5,780. As you know, the Hebrew calendar is a lot older than the Gregorian calendar, and therefore the date is much more advanced than the regular Gregorian calendar, which only started some 2,000 plus years ago. This started 5,780 years ago. Okay, so the first verse over here is from the second book of the Torah, the second book of Moses, the second book of the 5 books of Moses, and it's called Sefer Shmot, or the book of Exodus. Now I'm just going to read it in Hebrew, but you'll see in Hebrew over here that certain of the letters have been highlighted in red. Those highlighted letters are the letters of the Taf Shin Pei over here. Pei, Taf, Hey, Shin. Not in the necessarily, they don't have to necessarily be in the order, but these are the letters that we have to be concerned with. These are the letters that spell the Hebrew year. Now in English, I've said them all. I've highlighted them in yellow, so you can see that this section here with the red letters is highlighted in yellow in the English. Okay. So the verse says as follows: Lo agarashenu mipanecha b'shana echat. I will not drive them out in 1 year, in a single year. Pen tiyeh haaretz shmama, lest the land become depopulated, lest it become desolate. V'raba alecha chayat hasadeh, and then the wild animals will become too many for you to contend with. Okay, now what is the context of this verse? The context of the verse is as follows. This was right after the Jews had left Egypt and they received the Torah and this divine communication from God, the 10 Commandments. They received the tablets of stone and so on and so forth. And then God is telling them what the future holds. And he said, when I bring you into the land, there are already other people living in the land, and I will not drive out those people in a single year, because that land is promised to the Israelites. I will not drive them out in a single year, lest the land become depopulated, because if the land is depopulated, then all kinds of wild animals and things like that will start to increase, and it will be very difficult to deal with them. Okay, that's basically the context of the verse. So how's God going to send them out? Drive them out by sending, according to one translation, he'll send wasps ahead of them. They'll drive out the Hivites, the Canaanites, the Hittites, and so on and so forth. And others say it wasn't wasp, but some kind of plague that drove out the people. Okay, very important verse, and let us begin with an analysis of the verse now. Let's see, are there? Hi, Ronald. Didn't see you come in before. Okay, you're not late. You can join any time and you can get the recording afterwards, so don't worry about it. Okay. One of the classic commentators called Ibn Ezra, when he comments on this verse, he says, when then will the land be, how will it become, how will the nations that are in the land then be replaced by the Israelites? So this suggests, says the Ibn Ezra was a famous commentator on the Torah, an early commentator. He lived probably in about also maybe 1200s, 1300s, something like that. So the Ibn Ezra says, this is a sign to you when you become fruitful and multiply. In other words, God will slowly chase the people who are living, the indigenous people who are living out in the land, that will be driven out of the land slowly, not even by you, not by war necessarily, but they'll be driven out by either plague or by wasps that'll sort of chase them out. And these apparently were wasps that were poisonous and were deadly. In any event, this is the promise that God makes to the Israelites. So the Ibn Ezra says, this will be when you become fruitful and multiply. In other words, when there are enough people to inhabit the land, then it'll be time to start chasing the people out. Slowly. Ma'at agarshenu. I won't chase them out all at once, but slowly. Okay. Now, let's just understand that fact that when you become fruitful and multiply, we'll come back to that point a little bit later on. But what is the idea behind this concept of driving the nations out of the land? There's one commentator, the Tiferet Shlomo, who was a Hasidic Rebbe. He was a Hasidic rabbi and what they call an Admur. In other words, somebody who he was a leader of a Hasidic dynasty. And he explained basically as follows. He said that, as we know, in everything that there is in existence, there is a spark of holiness. Where did that spark of holiness come from? That spark of holiness comes from the fact that God wants that thing to exist. If he did not want it to exist, it would cease to exist immediately. It's the will of God, so to speak, buried within that thing, or if you want to put it more in this terminology, it's the speech of God which creates the world, and everything is brought into being, as we say in the morning prayers, Baruch She'omar v'haya ha'olam. God said and the world came into being, or the 10 utterances in the beginning of Genesis through which the world came into being. Now these 10 utterances are not said once upon a time at the beginning of creation. They are said from moment to moment. Also in the morning prayers we say HaMachadesh b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh bereshit. God renews creation, renews existence every day, and not only every day, as the prayer would imply, but actually from moment to moment, as is explained in one of the seminal works of Hasidic philosophy, which is called Shar HaYichud VaHa'emunah, the second part of the famous book Tanya, the gate of unity and faith, or as some would like to put it, the gate of unity and faithfulness rather than faith. Okay, so this Tiferet Shlomo says as follows. Again, every creature in existence has a spark of godliness within it. Everything, even a rock, an inanimate object, if it exists, it has a spark of godliness which maintains it in existence. That is why the sages describe creation as being created by 10 utterances, because an utterance is not the same as an action. When you do something, then there's a lasting effect. But when you say something, you have to constantly say it for it to be heard. An action, a person can make, a craftsman can make, let's say, I don't know, a candlestick or whatever, and then leave, and the candlestick remains. It doesn't need the maker to even be alive, certainly not to be present, for the candlestick to exist, which is not true of all of creation. Nothing in creation would continue to exist if it wasn't being spoken into existence from moment to moment. So everything has a spark of godliness in it. Why do we not see that spark? Because it's concealed. And in many cases, the spark is concealed by what is called klipot. Klipa means a shell or a husk. Now, this is a Kabbalistic term for the negativity which enwraps that divine spark and prevents that spark from being released back to its original state, from returning to its original state. When did this happen? How did this happen? This happened as a result of two things. One event was the shattering of the vessels of the world of Tohu, which we have discussed previously in previous videos. If anyone wants to get more information on that, you'll find on our YouTube channel, Kabbalah Decoded channel, one or more than one of the videos speaks about the world of Tohu, the shattering of the vessels of the world of Tohu. I don't remember what the date was that we said it, but there are probably a couple of videos on that issue. Alternatively, if you want to find out more about it, you can always go to KabbalahOnline.org, KabbalahOnline.org, that's Kabbalah online.org. Look for my name, search my name in the search box, just search for my name, and you'll find various articles on the shattering of the vessels of the world of Tohu, and you can pick them up over there. Now, there are many other writers at that website, some of them very good, and some of them, let's say, not so good, not so reliable. So if there's something that you're attracted to, I would suggest you ask me first. Well, I mean, you have your own judgment, but someone named Moshe Vishnevsky is a very good friend of mine, Wisniewski. He's very good. Who else is there? In any event, let's not get into it now. If anyone's interested, send me an email. I'll tell you who you can rely on over there. Is this related to the current land of Israel? Ernest asked. Currently, this next year, we're getting to it. What's going to come in the new year, the 5780, which is the coming year, the Rosh Hashanah, the head of the year. The first day of the year is called the head of the year, quite right. Rosh Hashanah, the head of the year, and that, just as the head contains the energy for the entire body, so too, the head of the year contains the life force for the entire year of this upcoming year, which is 5780. In any event, let's go back to what we were talking about, the Tiferet Shlomo. The Tiferet Shlomo pointed out that there's a spark of godliness, and it's covered and concealed due to the shattering of the vessels of the world of Tohu. That causes klipot, klipa meaning again shells. And then further, and those shells separate the original core, which is divine, it's godly, it's the word of God. It becomes separated, so to speak, in our experience, in any event, not in God's experience, but in our experience, becomes separated because of these shells and husks which surround it. Furthermore, it became further separated because of the sin of the golden calf, which caused it to be even to drop down even further. So part of our duties in this world are to get rid of these husks, this klippa, these impure qualities, to chase them out, to drive them out, and thus release the divine spark inside. Once all the divine sparks have been restored to their original position, to their original state as the vessels of Tohu, that will be the time of tremendous, tremendous revelation throughout the earth. Everyone will be on the level of prophets. Godliness will be visible and experienced everywhere, and so on. So the Tiferet Shlomo is suggesting that the idea here of you shall drive them out, but I will drive them out, but they will not be driven out in 1 year. They will be driven out as you develop, as you become, as the Ibn Ezra said, as you be fruitful and multiply. Be fruitful and multiply, not only that you have children, but that you be fruitful in yourself and multiply in yourself. In other words, that you grow spiritually. When you grow spiritually, you can fill the vacuum, which is what happens, the vacuum that's left from the forces of evil, from the shells, from the husk being pushed out. Now, the verse says, I will drive them out. God will drive them out. He'll send these wasps or this disease, this plague that will drive them out. In other words, there are circumstances by which these things are driven out. Unfortunately, one of the problems is that we tend to invite them back. We intend to invite them back. Not only do we invite them back, but we put out a red carpet and we get a band that's playing, playing a 10-piece band that's playing music and bugles and so on and so forth to welcome them in with a whole feast and so on and so forth, that we're going to present to the klipot, to the negative forces, and we welcome them back into our lives. Martin says, but for some this is impossible. It is too late. No. I don't agree with that. We'll get to it shortly. Now, the point being that God is not going to chase these things out until you are ready. He's not going to do it all at once. Why? Because you will not be able to get ready all at once. And in fact, it's not even advisable to get ready all at once. People who have a very sudden sort of conversion, if you want to call it that, a spiritual conversion, Very often that doesn't last. You have to build a foundation. And that foundation has to be built slowly, it has to be built carefully, it has to be built step by step. And therefore, yes, it may be true that if you're looking at the end point, it may seem that it's very, very far away. Martin, maybe this will address the question that you're asking. The end point might seem to be very far away, but the next step is not very far away. The next step is very close to you. In fact, there's a verse that says like that, and that says exactly that. Ki karov elecha davar ma'od. It is very close to you, beficha, in your mouth, uvilvavcha, and in your heart, la'asoisa, to do it. In your mouth, your speech, your heart, in other words, your thoughts, la'asoisa, to do it. In thought, speech, and deed, it is actually very close to you. We're not talking about jumping to the end goal in a sudden flash of enlightenment. We're talking about steady work, step by step, stage by stage, slowly, slowly. And as we increase in our spiritual prowess, as we fulfill the concept of be fruitful and multiply in a spiritual sense, we'll notice the klipot, the negative forces, being driven out automatically. We won't even have to really do anything. All we have to do is focus on the positive, focus on adding in the positive. We don't fight with the klipot. That's God's business. You don't fight the darkness with a stick. You only increase the light. You increase the light, the shadows disappear. The stronger the light, the more powerful the light, the more the light is broadcast outwards, the further away the darkness is pushed. And that's exactly the whole concept of that we're speaking about over here. There's actually a story, an interesting story. There was a certain person who was named Franz Rosenzweig. He lived 1886 to 1929. He was a German Jew, a philosopher, a very deep thinker, but even though he was brought up, initially he was brought up religious, as a young man, a young thinking person. Wendy, good. It's a good one. Wendy mentioned something over here privately, and I'm not going to disclose what she said, but it's very good. Okay, so this Franz Rosenzweig, as a young man, he sort of dropped everything and he started concentrating only on philosophy. And he became quite an accomplished philosopher, actually. But as luck would have it for him, he, for some reason, he had occasion to go to a synagogue. Perhaps he had to go for some kind of celebration. Maybe there was a wedding, or maybe there was a circumcision or something. He went to a synagogue. And he actually got quite interested. He got into conversation apparently with the rabbi, and he got quite interested, and he sort of started coming back. So somebody asked him, "Are you observant?" So his answer was very interesting. He said, "No, not yet, not yet." He's not observant of the commandments, but not yet. He didn't say, "No, I'm not observant." He said, "I'm not yet observant." In other words, that kind of leaves the door open. The biggest problem that people find is that they've closed the doors behind them, and they feel that they don't have any way to proceed. They're not willing to sort of knock on the door. But he said, I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet, but I haven't closed the door on it. I haven't given up. And I think he realized that the same teaching, which is really very fundamental, but also very simple. Ma'at agarshenu, I'll chase the darkness out slowly. Very important idea. Okay, there is a deeper explanation, as there is in these things as usual. So the deeper explanation is that this refers to, as I mentioned before, it refers to the elevation of the sparks of holiness that are trapped in the klipot, trapped in evil. And the way in which we do it is through humility. In technical jargon, this is Shem Ma Mevarer Shem Ban, or Shem Ben, some people say. The name Ma, the divine name, which is spelled out Yud K, all the divine names are spelled out Yud K Vav K, Yud a Hey and a Vav and a Hey. But then each of the letters is spelled out in slightly different formats. Anyway, one of them adds up to 45. The way you spell it out, that's Yud is Yud Vav Dalet, Hey, Hey Aleph, Vav is Vav Aleph Vav, and Hey is Hey Aleph. And if you add up the numerical value of each of the letters over there, it comes out to 45. Then there's Shem Ban, or Shem Ben, as some people say, which is also Yud Vav Dalet, and then Hey, Hey, Vav Vav, Hey, Hey. That makes 52, right? So so that's called Shem Ban, and the 45 letter, the 45 numerical value name is called Shem Ma. Now, the interesting thing is that the Shem Ma is the same numerical value as the word Adam, Adam meaning man, and then the name Ban or Ben is the same numerical value as the word behema, animal. So, when Shem Ma rectifies and purifies and elevates Shem Ban, that is the concept of the inner man, in other words, the divine image in which man is made, rectifying and purifying and elevating the animal nature, the animal soul, the animalistic aspect of ourselves. The more we increase the image of God in ourselves, the more the animals are afraid to come in to our territory. We push them out. Now, again, when we're talking here not about cruelty to animals, we're talking about only cruelty to our own animals. And it's not cruelty, it's actually kindness, because that's what the animals are. Animals want to be domesticated, so to speak, subdued to the purpose of good. And that's what it's all about. The conquering of the land of Israel is not simply just to drive everybody out. The conquering, the proper conquering of the land of Israel is to elevate it and make it into a holy place. Not just to drive out the darkness, but to make it into a holy place. Okay, and that depends very much, again, on our own efforts. So to get back to the meaning, therefore, of this year, let me share the screen again. To get back to the meaning of the year, let's just see here, 1 second. Can you see the screen? Yeah? Right, animal soul versus the human soul, exactly, right. Climbing the rungs, the sulam is a way for each of us to get there, right? Yes, climbing the rungs of the ladder, which is called the sulam, and that is the Kabbalistic ladder. Okay, true change does seem to need recurring exposure to the change so it sticks. We kind of know this already as part of our daily struggles and successes. Yes, we do, absolutely. That is 100% true. Yeah. Okay. So to take it back to our year, what is our year promise, the upcoming year? Well, it seems to me that a major emphasis on this year is an emphasis on increasing the light in the world, increasing the good in the world, so that the darkness, the evil, the powers, the forces, negative forces will be driven out in a personal sense, and also perhaps in a national sense and in an international sense. In other words, the more we increase our own light and the light of those around us, the more the land becomes populated in the proper manner, the more the land becomes elevated, becomes the Holy Land. So this year, I think, to me, means that it's going to be a year of incremental change, incremental addition in our work, which means that not only should we have a goal, but even more than a goal, we need a system. As Martin pointed out, to change, true change is not so easy, right? Real change is not so easy, but it's not so easy when you're looking at the end goal in mind. But one step at a time, slowly, is not really all that difficult. So this should be for everybody a year where you plan the additions that you're going to make, the pru and revu, the be fruitful and multiply in your life. In other words, let's take it in very simple steps. Let's say that a person is going to commit to, let's say, doing some community service. Could be once a week, could be once a month, once a day, it doesn't matter, whatever it is. But that increases goodness in the world. Some of you are very involved already in community service, so some other aspect of elevating yourself will have to be found. It could be in knowledge, in other words, in learning things, and learning things which are bound to bring you to a higher, obviously, reading things which do the opposite is not productive, it's completely counterproductive. When we must, if it's going to be reading or taking classes or lessons or thinking things through or learning with a partner, very good idea to learn with a partner, learn certain texts with a partner. Even if you do it by phone or online or together or whatever it is, that will also be a way of elevating yourself, gaining more knowledge. And of course, there are many other avenues. I don't have to tell you all what would be the best way to go, because if each one has to figure it out for himself, what is the best next step for them to take. Now, Martin points out that when you're going up the ladder, sometimes you slip down. And yes, that's true. Sometimes you do slip down. When we say getting rid of the evil, some of the evil we need to really get rid of, like the evil from the 3 impure klipot. Some of that from klipat noga, which is there are 4 levels of klipa. 3 of them are completely impure and have to be gotten rid of. 1 can be elevated. That's klipat noga. In any event, that klipat noga, can be elevated. It can be lifted up, and by doing positive actions, it will be lifted up. So this year, the year of Tafshin Pei, 578 Hey Tafshin Pei, 5780 has to be for us a year of good, hard, solid, incremental work, slowly. I think we will see a lot of good things happening in this year. The verse is actually a very positive one, and it promises very good things happening. And when I say very good things happening, it doesn't mean only in a personal sense. I think it'll be in a much more universal sense. We'll see some of our enemies, let's say the enemies of this country, which is essentially a good country. America is a good country in general. It's got good values and good in general, and good goals, and helps many other countries. But I think what we will see is there'll be incremental steps in reducing the violence and evil that there is in the world from certain quarters, dictatorships, and so on. And hopefully this coming year will actually be, when we look back at the end of 5780, which is the coming year, we will, I think, see that there were incremental changes in very positive ways moving forward. just see some of the comments here. So when one becomes aware or understands the spark in the heart, within it opens up for everyone in some way too. Yes. It demands not only understanding, but also action. Emotions and understanding are very, very important, and they're the first step in many cases, but action is demanded. And for some people, action actually must precede emotions and intellectual understanding. You find very often, in our own experience as well, that when you act on something, then you begin to understand it much better. Theorizing about something very often doesn't work. I have some friends who are, being that I live in Chicago, I have some friends who are traders. And they say, everything works well in theory, but, you'll never become a trader unless you actually start getting your hands dirty. Usually that means losing money to start off with. But hopefully then, you learn lessons from what you did wrong and so on and so forth. You slip down the ladder a little bit maybe. But in any event, understanding is not to be sneezed at. Very, very important. It doesn't always come first. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Okay, Ernest, is our contribution understanding of this next year's meaning dependent on our ability to focus on this next year's meaning? And if we are not focused on the meaning, may we miss the meaning of this next year? Well, I don't think that, yes, in a general sense, one should be focused on what it is that we can accomplish. And the accomplishment has to be, again, slowly, incremental improvements. Let's put it that way. Does one have to be constantly aware? Well, it helps. You don't have to be constantly aware, but it certainly helps when there's a saying, actually, mitzvah habala yadcha al tachmitzena, when a good deed comes to your hand, don't let it get away, or don't let it start to decay. Time decay or any other decay or whatever. Don't let it decay. In other words, when a good deed comes to your hand, act on it right away. When a good thing comes your way, don't say, "I'll put it off till tomorrow." Do it right away. And so, in that sense, one should have it in mind. I hope that answers that question. Hank, when man and woman on the mirror does think of the will of Hashem and his desire, we seek and give to the Yetzer Hara evil inclination, don't follow the 13 principles of study Torah, and then we, in whatever direction, up, down, or out, our choice is free will. Yes, that's right, our choice. We have the choice. We have the choice. God sets the circumstances, but we have the choice. That is absolutely correct. What about Pharaoh? Can someone actually lose free will as they have gone down to the 49th level? Doesn't seem to work in government. Yeah, let's leave the government out of this. Not a good model to look at in general. Governments usually are pretty not that good at doing things. Some things only the government can do, but most things are better done in the private sector. But whatever. Yes, it is true that a person can come to such a level of impurity that, as the Kabbalistic expression goes, only shvirato hu takanato, shvirato hu takanasa, only breaking that person is the only rectification possible. Breaking that person apart is the only rectification. Unfortunately, we've seen some of these kinds of incidents recently with some really evil people. You know about all the shootings and things like that at schools and various other places and malls and synagogues. Those people who perpetrate those things, I don't know if they're redeemable. Probably not. They've gone down the rabbit hole and they're not coming back, unfortunately. But so there are some people who are irredeemable, I would say, yes. Yeah, action isn't always corporeal. No, it could be not physical action, but it could be action in other ways. Meditation is also, has active component, I suppose you could say. And one might, increase in one's time in meditation or something like that. But in any way, in any event, this year I think promises to be actually a very, I personally feel a very productive year. If you read the letters of the year backwards, Pei, Shin, Taf, so it could read in two ways. No, let's read it the other way. Taf, Pei, Shin could be understood as tapas, to grab onto, to hold onto something. Litfos is to hold on to or to catch something. So I think it's a year where there'll be opportunities to catch, so to speak. And it will need we will need to do some some rubbing away of the outer skins, of the outer levels of klipa, of the shells, in order to get to the core. And that also is hinted to in the shin and the pei. The shin and the pei, these two letters in Hebrew, these two letters here. Oops, just these two letters. Spell the word shaf. Shaf means to scrape or to stroke or scrape away, essentially. Yeah, the shaf is to scrape away or to rub out negativity and to increase positivity. Okay, folks, that's it for today. And hopefully there will be a lesson again next week. I'm planning on one. And if I don't see you next week, which I'm planning on doing, then in the week after. Okay. So all the best. And if anyone wants a recording, it will be up fairly soon. Okay, Shane, I will send you a link for a private meeting. I'll send you that shortly. Okay. All the best, everybody. Good night.